Good morning, everybody. My name is Mrs. Brakey, and I'm a longstanding member of the development office here at Brooks. I'm also a very proud alum from a long time ago now. I work with Mrs. Dobbins and a wonderful team of people over in the advancement office to help ensure that our alumni all over the world stay connected to Brooks and continue to support the work of everyone here. And in that spirit, I'm here today to kick off our first annual community service chapel. We have a generous alumnus and his family who has given to the school over many years to help ensure the Brooks Community Service Program is well supported. Established in 2008, the Northup Community Service Fund was created to endow the continuation of the well-established community service program at Brooks, originally known as the Lawrence Project. The Lawrence Project was the first formal community service initiative at Brooks. It began in the 1960s under former faculty member Reverend Isaac Ike Northup, who strongly believed that students at Brooks should have a meaningful, sustained relationship with the neighboring communities, especially Lawrence. It was a pretty forward-thinking idea at the time for an independent school. Faculty Emerita Maureen Perkins began working at Brooks in 1968. At the time, the Lawrence Project was just getting established, and she became very involved within a few years. Mrs. Perkins quickly became the steady center of the program, quietly and consistently building partnerships over the decades that followed. She believed deeply that service wasn't about charity, but about human connection, dignity, and mutual learning. Early partners were the elementary schools in the Lawrence area. Other partnerships included organizations such as the Lawrence Boys and Girls Club, the Haverhill Club, the Greater Lawrence and Haverhill YMCAs, and groups in Lawrence that supported immigrant populations. Mrs. Perkins partnered with Lazarus House in Coronum and Lawrence and Emus House in Haverhill from the day they opened their doors. She branched into various services by adding Windrush Farm, assisted care facilities, and senior centers. Anywhere a vulnerable population was being served, she looked for opportunities. The idea was always continuity, going back week after week, year after year, so that Brooks students weren't just visitors. They became known faces in those spaces and made real connections with the folks they were working alongside. Mrs. Perkins remained involved in the community service program at Brooks until she retired in 2011. Generations of students passed through the program during that time, and for many of them, it was a very formative part of their Brooks experience. It started with Mrs. Perkins bringing just a couple of kids, and it grew into a program with significant impact both on campus and in the larger community. Today, on average, over 60 students participate in the afternoon community service program at Brooks each year. There are as many as 80 additional students involved in community service on a different schedule. Some tutor once a week, some serve at soup kitchens monthly, some help with on-campus partners weekly, while others find time within their schedules to make regular visits to Lawrence schools and organizations to help on their evenings, weekends, and during school breaks. It's our hope each year to welcome an outside speaker, hopefully an alumnus, that has made community service part of their personal and/or professional journey. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Packard, who's going to introduce today's distinguished speaker.
Good morning again. Andres Burbank-Crump has known Brooks School literally from birth. He's the son of faculty members Emeritus and Emerita Doug Burbank, who's here today and served the school in more ways than any citation could capture between 1986 and 2020, and you can still find him in a math classroom and bouncing around from time to time. And Roberta Crump Burbank, also here today, and also served the school in more ways than I can count, retiring as Director of Athletics when this class of 2026 were third formers and serving the school from 1985 to 2023. That's 72 years of service to Brooks School. Pretty remarkable. Andres grew up on this campus with incredible role models as parents, and to no one's surprise, he has become an incredible role model to the many young people he's reached in his still young life. He attended Brooks from 2007 to 2011, was an outstanding student, a star on our soccer team, a terrific squash player, captain of both teams, and an outstanding leader and citizen. He went on to Williams College, where he continued to excel in the classroom and on the soccer pitch as a player on nationally ranked teams. I think at least one Final Four, maybe a final? Two Final Fours, and captain his senior year, graduating in 2015. While at Williams, he majored in history with a minor in Latino studies. Upon graduating, he started working at Squash Busters in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and has stayed with the organization ever since. While he's held many roles over the past 10-plus years, he's currently the Executive Director of Development and Partnerships, no doubt continuing to foster transformative experiences for young people all the time. Please join me in welcoming my former advisee, Andres Burbank-Crump, Brooks School Class of 2011, back to his childhood home, his alma mater, and our school. Mr. Burbank-Crump.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? All right. What Mr. Packard neglected to mention, I was his advisee. I was also his last advisee, which probably says something about me that he decided to take no more after he had dealt with me for 4 years. So as I mentioned, my name is Andres Burbank-Crump. I graduated Brooks in 2011. I'm going to tread a little bit of familiar territory here with what Mr. Packard just said. But in addition to graduating and spending 4 years here as a student, I spent the first 18 years of my life living on the Brooks School campus. I grew up over in Head East. I spent most of my childhood afternoons playing on the various courts and fields around campus, trying every sport I could, and spent my Wednesdays and Saturdays supporting Brooks athletics. Brooks faculty were referred to as aunts and uncles in my house. All of my babysitters were Brooks students. The voice is going to crack. That happens when I get nervous public speaking. All of my babysitters were Brooks students, and meals were had in the Brooks School dining hall. All that is to say, I was very fortunate to grow up in a place like Brooks, where I considered every adult on campus a mentor and every student a role model. However, one of the potential downsides of growing up at a prep school campus is almost every single adult you know works at a school, which really limits your perspective on potential professions after college. So I found myself my senior year at Williams having absolutely zero clue what I wanted to do after graduating. Because it's what I thought everybody did, I applied to a few different boarding schools. Shout out to Mr. Smith for an incredible day over at Salisbury, which I loved. But after spending 18 years on a prep school campus, I found myself reluctant to jump right back in. So I didn't know what I wanted to do until one day I got an email from an organization called Squash Busters Lawrence asking if I was interested in applying. So actually real quick, can you guys raise your hand if you've heard of Squash Busters? Just so I get a sense? No, heck yeah. So you guys are obviously familiar, and a little more than just the fact that when you first hear the name it sounds a little bit silly and you don't know what's going on. But our sort of elevator pitch is that we are a long-term, sports-based youth development program that helps young people from underserved communities fulfill their greatest potential in life. And we do that through robust after-school programming where students receive academic and social-emotional support. They learn team-building skills through the sport of squash, as well as a number of trips, support with college applications, ultimately culminating in ensuring every graduate enrolls in a full-time or is employed in a meaningful full-time role. That kind of sounds like a lot, so the way I simplify it to myself is our role is basically two things. One is we create a community where young people feel like they belong, and then we give them the skills and the opportunities they need to achieve their goals in life. I'll also note we make no promises about the level of squash that we get our kids to, despite Angie being an incredible player. A really important fact, given when I took the role of middle school squash coach, I hadn't touched a racket since my senior year at Brooks, something I didn't mention in my interview. But everything else about Squash Busters felt incredible. The idea of building a strong network of support to help young people achieve their potential felt like significant overlap with what I had been so special about Brooks, both as a student and as a faculty kid. And Squash Busters' mission resonated because it was all about the support, experiences, and growth that happen outside of the classroom that are so vital in one's life. Another side effect of growing up on a prep school campus is you tend to have the school's mission to be the most meaningful experience students will have in their lives, like ingrained into the back of your skull for your entire childhood. And as someone who had benefited immensely from this, surrounded by mentors, role models, and opportunities at Brooks, it felt fitting to seize this chance to help others who may not have had the same opportunities I had. It also came with the benefit of, as a 22-year-old, not needing to commit every Friday and Saturday night to dorm duty for the next 9 months. So lots of positives with joining Squash Busters. So that fall, I joined as a middle school squash coach, and I made it my mission to do my best. When you're 22 and in your first job out of college, the reality is, at least for me, no idea what I was doing. But I tried. I jumped in head first. I knew from my time at Brooks that strong relationships are the foundation of strong communities, and so my primary goal became building relationships with students, families, teachers, administrators, coaches, staff at other after-school programs, anybody who could play a meaningful role in the development and success of our students. Collaborating with these individuals, I found myself asking, how can we surround each student with a team of caring adults like I had had at Brooks? How can we make the Squash Busters team as supportive and collaborative as the many groups I had been lucky enough to have been a part of while a student here? While working with my middle schoolers 6 days a week after school, I found myself getting advice that I remembered hearing from my own coaches and teachers at Brooks. And when I needed to build strong team culture in my middle school, I recalled the traditions that my soccer coaches, Dusty Richards, and believe it or not, Mr. Packard, had done with us on the boys' soccer team at Brooks. While working, I also found myself trying a lot of new things. Much like my short but spectacular career as a bell ringer as part of the Bishop's Bells during my senior year, I had to get out of my comfort zone. Is Bishop's Bells still a thing? That's devastating. I'll bring it back. I have no musical skill. I had to get out of my comfort zone. Like many 22-year-olds, I wasn't comfortable talking on the phone, particularly when it involved having difficult conversations with parents about their kids, giving feedback, talking about upholding high standards during practice. Who am I to be saying this? I barely know what I'm doing. And these conversations were happening in Spanish, so I wasn't even totally sure I was getting my message across. But as challenging as this was, the work wasn't about being perfect. Honesty and effort built trust and strengthened the relationships we had with families, which fed back into the culture and community we were trying to build. Whatever it took to build the network of support for the young people we were serving. Getting out of my comfort zone continued to be a theme, as we were a growing organization, and with growth comes new challenges. I was fortunate enough to take on many different roles over the following decade, from middle school squash coach working directly with students on court every day, to an operations manager coordinating logistics, to a program director managing a team of adults, 2 to 3 years of which involved managing Mr. Burbank in the back, which for those of you who know him might require a whole different speech, to head of innovation helping to plan a new squash and education facility to be built in Lawrence, all the way to my current role as executive director. As my role continued to change, the more I found myself out of my comfort zone, trying to bring the same energy and vulnerability that comes with learning new skills and trying new things. The other element these different roles illuminated, which I hadn't been expecting, was the continued importance of collaboration and strong relationships in my work. Whether it was with my students on court, or it was a series of subcontractors working on our new facility, or a group of donors interested in supporting a fundraiser, the work was still about creating a functioning team. Answering questions like, how do we make sure everybody feels valued and supported? Where are people's strengths and what role can they play? And how do we support each other to build a resilient group? I knew these questions would always be critical to our work with our students in our immediate Squash Busters community in Lawrence, but hadn't anticipated truly how different people play a role, big or small, in any organization's success. In December of 2024, Squash Busters finished construction on our own community center in Lawrence, meaning that these days, in a truly full circle experience, I get to spend my time playing what I call the Brooks School role, which is to say, how can we best share our space to help those who need it? For 13 years, Brooks opened its doors to us, allowing Squashbusters Lawrence to flourish into what it has become today. Now, we have our own classrooms, squash courts, and a beautiful center that we can open to the community. Like Brooks, we also recognize that we have an obligation to use these resources we have at our disposal to amplify our impact and help those who need it. So that's a big part of what my focus gets to be now, finding other organizations whose work could be elevated by using our classroom spaces and answering these questions, like how many individuals could we benefit if we opened up our space when we're not having our own programming? And how does Squashbusters do all this while continuing to strengthen our own program and including these folks in our ever-growing community? If Brooks hadn't asked itself these questions 13 years ago when we asked them for squash courts and classroom spaces, I likely wouldn't be here today. This, at an individual level, is ultimately what I'd encourage you all to do. Consider your innate abilities, the skills you've learned, the resources and relationships you have, and how you can use those to strengthen the communities in your life. Whether it's your dorm, a team on campus, the school, or even your town or city, what role can you play to make it stronger? Because robust communities, big or small, have outsized long-term impacts on the individuals in them. And that ultimately has been my biggest takeaway from my time at Brooks and what I've been fortunate enough to try to replicate while at Squashbusters. A few final thoughts. First, Mrs. Dobbins asked me a few months ago to speak about service to community and community service. And I just want to reiterate that being an active part of any community is service to community. And while I'd encourage every one of you, if you have the opportunity in the afternoon, to participate in Brooks School's community service programs, even if you can't, community service certainly exists outside the bounds of an after-school activity 5 days a week. It's how you treat each other, it's listening, it's asking questions, seeking different perspectives, creating space for different voices, and ensuring everybody in the community knows they have a place in it. One of the wonderful aspects of Brooks is that you have students and faculty from all over with different lived experiences. This is as crucial as any other aspect of your education here at Brooks, and I promise you these skills will be valuable in any college, team, or job you go on to be part of in the future. Not only have I found this to be the case in my experience working in Lawrence, but as much as I've tried to contribute to the Lawrence community, I can assure you I've gotten much more out of it. Second, every person within a community is valuable. Again, whether it's team, musical, your dorm, whether you're the captain, manager, or someone cheering in the stands, teams don't function without everybody doing their part. And you often have an impact much larger than what you might anticipate. To illustrate this, a very short story, I promise. Part of my role is to find donors for Squashbusters to keep the lights on, and so I'll invite individuals to take a tour of our facility, and I'll give them a little spiel about how their donation might help us keep the lights on. So I invited a gentleman about 3 months ago into the space. It was going fine, but the moment that really triggered something for him was when I took him downstairs to the squash courts, and he saw 4 middle school girls sing karaoke. Now, were they very good singers? No comment. Should they have been on court doing fitness with the rest of their teammates? Probably. And if one of our squash coaches were here, I'd say absolutely yes. But them showing up and being authentically themselves and being joyful and enthusiastic and singing their mediocre karaoke with their eyes bright as anything is ultimately what allowed me to do my job, because that is what sold it to this individual. And so you may not always see the impact that showing up authentically as yourself has, but I promise you, it does have a big impact. The final thing I'd like to say is, I've said it to individuals here, but I'll say it to the community, which is thank you. I clearly get emotional with this, but Squashbusters would not exist without without Brooks. And when we started, we were 28 6th and 7th graders on one bus, just doing some after-school homework and learning a new sport. And now we actively work with 180 11 through 25-year-olds, many of whom are the first in their families to go to college and who are now graduated and leaders in their own communities. And none of that could have happened without the generosity of the whole Brooks community. So whether you've actively volunteered, that voice crack, man, I swear to God. Whether you've actively volunteered at one of our practices, whether you've allowed us to use your classroom, whether you started your own practice at 9 p.m. because we were taking up 4 courts in the back for like every single day for a decade, or whether you just contribute to this Brooks community in a meaningful way, in the same community that puts its values at the forefront and allowed a small organization from Lawrence to use this space and fulfill its potential. A very sincere thank you to everybody here. Thank you.